Oh, you guys, we're getting into something cool. Brushes. Brushes are going to help redefine the way you make marks in Illustrator. Moving ahead from the pencil and the pen tool, the brush gives you some options that can kind of take you out of the flat digital world into some more organic results, and some that are still digital and really just pleasantly blobular. The paintbrush is a tool located in the toolbar. You should be able to see it. It's bundled up with the blob brush. That's a separate lesson. Friends of the paintbrush tool are the eraser tool, the blob brush, but basically any mark you ever make can be turned into a brush. So you don't have to use the brush tool to make brush strokes, but it makes more sense to start off with the brush tool to make those strokes, because there are some settings that are specific to the brush tool. The brush tool itself, if you double click on it, boop, boop, opens up the paintbrush tool options, very similar to the pencil. What's your fidelity? How accurate are you? How smooth are your brush strokes? So I'm just going to leave mine in the middle right now, so it's kind of just, in the middle. Generally, we don't want to fill brush strokes. We just want the strokes for themselves, so you can keep that unchecked. But if you're in the situation where you do want to fill it, you can check that here, and it will access the fill property from your swatches there. Do you want to keep it selected? Generally not. And then you can also edit brush paths just like you can with a pencil. I'm going to get out of here. Right before we draw anything, we should talk about the brush options from our properties panel. So in the properties panel, you can see now that I have brush selected. Here's the brush, and here are some default options for the brush: a 3-point round, a 10-point round, a 3-point oval, or a touch calligraphic brush. So we're just going to start off first with a 3-point round brush, just so you can see how you make a mark. And it has definitely a little different characteristic than a pencil stroke. What's interesting is that my stroke options are set to 1 point. And if I drew a 1-point line with a pencil, it would be much thinner than this. That is because my brush that I have selected is a 3-point round brush. So this sort of takes over the settings of the stroke. Stroke options still do count. If I select this path, I can obviously change its color to blue or something like that. And I can increase its weight by changing the stroke weight. So it does honor the 3-point round, but then it will take you up like kind of it'll multiply it basically based on your stroke weight. So that's just a default brush. If we want to take a look at something like the calligraphic or the oval. We'll start with the oval first, 3-point oval. The oval has a different marking process to it, where it's wider than it is tall, so it's going to give me some strokes that are, or parts of my stroke that are thicker than or wider than others, and they get really narrow, kind of depending on which direction you're dragging your brush. So this you can see it here, especially if I zoom in. You can see that how much thicker this path is going up than it is on this right incline, and I'll just demonstrate it here. And that is because of the nature of the shape of this brush. I will zoom out, delete all of those. The last one here is the touch calligraphic. Come on, guy. And this one is going to behave differently if I have a stylus and a pen tablet. So as you can see, I'm getting very thin strokes until I start to push down harder, and then I get a nice wide stroke. This is built in for people like you and me who are smart enough to get our pen tablets rocking. So that's kind of a cool little design. This is the touch calligraphic setting, and it is going to give you basically a round brush that's, obviously it has the ability to get pretty fat, but it also can be very thin based on pressure. So the next thing we should look at is other brush options. I'm going to get rid of these. So another way to get modified brush strokes would be to look into the drawer under the brush options here and see that there are a few ones that are listed here. Basic puts us right back to a very just basic line. There's no contours or intricacies to it. This second one that some of you may see or may not, it may be there by default, is a charcoal feather, but we're going to find out where these things actually live. These new ones live in groups or libraries that you can find here at the bottom of this well by clicking on the little library button, or just even more handy, there's a library button right here that opens it up. And so we have lots of different categories. We have arrows, artistic brushes, borders, bristle brushes, decorative, image brushes, vector packs, and so on. So arrows are going to be brush strokes that just have arrows on them with all these decorative sort of looks. You know, I'll pick this guy and just kind of go boop, and I've got a zigzaggy brush. Since I have now clicked on this brush, I can close this window here if I wanted. It has added it to the well of brushes that I have here. If you're playing around and you add a bunch of brushes and you're like, ah, there's too many in here, you can just select one and hit the little trash can and it'll delete it, or you can just drag it down to the trash can too. So I'm going to open that little library guy back up. So those are arrows. If we go look at artistic, you can get into, like, you know, chalk, charcoal, pencil brushes. And these are pretty interesting. What they are is that they're vector graphics that are mapped to the line that you create with your brush stroke. So someone created this under Adobe's, you know, creative team, and they're probably direct samples from actual marks made with charcoal or chalk that have been turned into a vector form. And if I select one, I'll select this scribble one, and I do a line, that vector shape is mapped out to the length of my stroke. So you can see if I do a short one, it looks kind of chalky. The longer I make it, the more stretched out it gets, and perhaps the less chalky it's going to end up looking. So some of these translate very well under different distances. Some of them translate better under short strokes. You know, here's one that has like even little spots of material coming off of it, and this is what ends up having, you know, an option or a characteristic to your brushes that take you out of just that digital line. We'll open that back up. So I encourage you all to look at all the different groups and play with them. Even like the image brush, this is really interesting. They've put in actual photographs, then I think they traced them, turned them into vectors, but I can make like a telephone cord, which is really cool. That would be hard to replicate on my own, so thanks, creative team. There's things like denim stitches, leather stitches. There's bling. There's like total bling in here. I can make gold chains, silver chains, shoelaces, you name it. The image library is just really, it's pretty fun. Brushes can be quite basic, and they can also get very advanced. And also, once this window's open, you can just kind of tab through these guys and see that you've got some really outstanding options out there. Oh, that's not a brush, that's some selection tool. So with each of these brushes that you're working with, there are still modifications to them that you can access. If you were to access it in your drawer and double click on one, you'll see that there are properties in here that say, you know, what's the width based on? Is it a fixed width based on the parameters that I've set over here on my stroke weight? Or can I set it to pressure? And this pressure means how hard I push on my stylus. So you can actually get in and modify these different brush strokes to work with a graphics tablet, which is awesome. Scale it proportionally, meaning the longer line that I make, the thicker it's going to be, or do we keep it so that it stretches and it maintains the same width? This is, you know, these can be interesting results for you as well, and I suggest you play with them. For example, if I use the one right now and I say, okay, I'm scaling it proportionally, I will just leave the stroke there already. So if I do a short one, it looks like that. If I do a longer one, it's getting fatter and wider. So that's what scaling proportionally is going to do for that. If I stretch it to fit the stroke length, it'll always be the same width no matter how long it is. A few other things in there you can look at. You can look at the direction in which the artwork is applied to the line. There's colorization. You can flip along different axes. And if you get into some of these too, they also have some options as far as what the like oval looks like. You can make a perfect circle or more of an oblong oval, and get some variation in your lines there too. So that's how you edit these guys, and that's how you access all of your brushes and make some really cool work. The next couple videos in the series will get into the blob brush, making your own custom brushes, and working with the eraser. Thanks.